Hello, grade 10. And so this is the second part of our discussion. So last time we discussed about the endocrine system. So now we're going to discuss about the nervous system. Okay, so the nervous system is of course it comprises the brain, the spinal cord, and it deals with the control of uh, controlling our body. Okay, so we will be discussing all of those things and the process of what happens when a signal is being transmitted from one part of the body to another. Okay, so now let's look at the different functions of the nervous system. So first, it is the control center for all body activities, whether it be breathing, circulation, digestion. So all of the things that happen inside our body is controlled by the nervous system. Second function is it responds and adapts to changes that occur both inside and outside the body. So of course, the nervous system also has a big role when it comes to homeostasis, wherein the nervous system is the one that will dictate what to do so that the body's what do you call that the condition inside your body will remain the same, or it should return to the status quo. Okay, so for example, if there is pain, of course, so um the the nervous system is going to dictate that you have to remove a certain part of your body um, from injury. So, for example, you're not wearing protective handwear. So, for example, you're cooking and you don't have mittens on, and then you touch the stove that is currently boiling. No. You're touching the stove and it contains water that is boiling. Then, uh, the nerve endings in your uh, fingertips will will detect a change in temperature or the pain that is felt by your fingertips. It's going to send a signal to the brain, and then the brain is going to dictate that you should remove your hand from that one. So that's why the reaction of your body when touching something hot is that you're going to remove it. Okay, because your fingertips felt pain. So it's a very fast response. So from the receiving the signal of pain to sending the signal to the brain for the brain to process what to do, and then the body is going to send a signal to the part of the body that's going to respond. Okay, so we have the neuron. So the neurons is the basic unit of structure and function in the nervous system. So the neurons are spread all throughout in our body. So these cells conduct impulses. So the impulses are the signal that is being passed from one neuron to another. So the different parts of the neuron is that we have the dendrite, cell body, and the axon. Okay, so let's look at the anatomy of a neuron. So all of the neurons contain these parts, the cell body. So the cell body is the one at the middle, and as you can see, and it contains the nucleus of this cell. We all know from previous biology topics that all cells contain the nucleus. Next, we have the dendrites. So the dendrites is connected to the cell body. It surrounds it, as you can see in the picture. So the dendrites are the fibers that receive messages from other neurons. So of course, there is another neuron that is found at the other end of the dendrite. And of course, the axon. So the axon is a very long tail compared to the dendrites, as you can see in the picture. And this is the fiber that sends messages to other neurons. So in a neuron, the dendrite is the receiver of the message, and the axon is the sender of the message to the other neurons. Okay? So again, this is just another explanation. So the dendrites are branch-like extensions. They receive impulses and then they carry them towards the cell body. And then the axon is a single extension. So in a neuron, we have a lot of dendrites, but we only have one axon. Again, we have a lot of dendrites, but only one axon in the neuron. So this single extension carries impulses away from the cell body. Okay? So at the end of the axon, there is a branching out so that it can send impulses to other neurons. So as you can see, and so the end of the axon can branch out to two so that it can send a signal to another neuron, not just one. Okay. So meanwhile, the dendrites receive impulses from many other axons. So the dendrites are connected to a lot more other axons. Okay. So another thing to take note about neurons is that they do not touch. So they're just very close to each other. They don't touch like this, but they're just very close. And then there is a gap between them, and that gap is called the synapse. So the synapse is the part of the neuron where it transmits. So the signal jumps from the axon to the dendrite. Okay. So messages are sent across the synapses by special chemicals called neurotransmitters. So there are neurotransmitters that help the signal to cross from the axon to the dendrite. Okay, so in a sense, a lot is happening in our nervous system. So it can be a different branching of a lot of those things. So there's a lot of signals are passing through one part of the body to another. So there might be traffic, but of course it's not that worse compared to the traffic that we have in the Philippines. But there's a lot of going on because in our body a lot is happening. So these signals travel very fast, and in a single neuron a lot of signal is being passed through every single minute or second. So now we're going to discuss the parts of the nervous system. So it is actually divided into two parts. You have the central nervous system, or the CNS, and the peripheral nervous system. So we will discuss first the central nervous system. So the CNS is made up of the brain and the spinal cord. So it is the body's control center. So this is where all of the decision making happens. It coordinates the body's activities such as for example, me right now, as I am speaking to you, it coordinates um, the brain coordinates my thought processes on the words that I'm going to tell you, and also the action of my muscles in my mouth, so that I can tell the words that I am thinking right now. So impulses travel through the neurons in your body to reach the brain. So for example, in the incident wherein you are when you touch something hot, so the impulse is going to start on your fingertips, and then it will travel to all of your neurons from the fingertips until it reaches your spinal cord, and then the spinal cord is going to relate to your brain, and then your brain is going to make a decision, and then the brain is going to send back the signal through the spinal cord and then back to the fingertips so that it will the muscles are going to have the action of taking your hand or your fingers away from the um sorry taking your hands away from the hot object. Okay, so this is the first part of the central nervous system. It is the brain. So it is the center of knowledge, emotion, learning, and awareness. So a lot of things are happening in our brain. So it is divided into three major parts: the cerebrum, cerebellum, and the brainstem. So we're going to discuss these parts of the brain. So first, this is the cerebrum. As you can see, This is the large part of our body, the cerebrum. Okay? And then we have the we also have that it comprises the forebrain. Yan, yung cerebrum, thalamus, and hypothalamus. And as you can see, the pituitary gland is right here from the endocrine system. And we have our midbrain and our hindbrain. So, ito, part pa din siya ng brain hanggang dyan. Okay? So, now let's discuss first the cerebrum. So the cerebrum is the largest part of the brain. It is divided into the right and left hemisphere. So it's not really that divided, but there's just a division, as you can see in the picture also. So the left hemisphere controls the right side of the body, and the right hemisphere controls the left side of the body. And of course, as if you were curious when it comes to psychology, so the left brain is more logical, more thinking about logical and um, more on analysis. Meanwhile, the right brain is for creativity, imagination, and so on. So if, let's say, for example, you're a right brain dominant and you are a creative person, there are times that creative people have a dominant left hand. So yung mga kaliwete dyan, di ba? Usually yung mga kaliwete, sila yung mga magagaling mag-drawing. And so, uh, ibig sabihin lang nun na mas dominant yung right brain nila. Kasi the right brain controls the left side of the body, and it just proves na yung creative people are mostly left-handed. But it doesn't mean that right-handed people cannot be creative. So there is a balance. There are some people who have a balanced use of the left brain and the right brain. And there are people who have a dominant left brain na hindi masyadong magaling sa creativity, sa art, pero sobrang galing nila mag-solve, sobrang galing tawag dito, mag-analyze ng mga bagay-bagay. Ayun. So, kumbaga, there is a certain talent for each people. So, if you want, you can take an online test to see which part of your brain is dominant. Okay, so I'm not going to give you a link, but there are a lot of links in the internet that you can find. Just find um, an appropriate one, yung proven and tested. Okay? So, inside, the next part in the cerebrum is we have the corpus callosum. So, the corpus callosum is the green area that you can find underneath, and it connects the two hemispheres of the brain. Okay, so the two hemispheres are not really separated, but they are still connected, and the corpus callosum is the one that connects it. So now let's talk about the four lobes in our body. So the frontal lobe is responsible for talking, moving, to reason out, planning, and solving. So the frontal lobe is this one, the yellow part that's found at the front. So this is the lobes are found in each hemisphere. So this is just one hemisphere. So the frontal lobe is found right here. So next we have the temporal lobe. So the temporal lobe is the one responsible for hearing and recognizes different sounds. So your temporal lobe is functioning right now, especially if you're listening to me. But if you're not listening to me, then your temporal lobe is not that functional. Okay? So that makikinig kayo. Ayan, yung temporal lobe, nandito naman siya sa may bandang ilalim, dito banda. Ayan. So, the temporal lobe, as you can see, is close to the ears. Kasi dito banda yung frontal, temporal, malapit dito sa may tenga. Okay? Next, we have the parietal lobe. So, the parietal lobe is the one that distinguishes sensation. So, yung mga yung mga ano natin, yung senses natin, yung sense of touch, sorry, sense of taste. So, yung mga how we perceive and the world. So, yan. Yung parietal lobe ay nandito sa may likod banda. Here. Sa may gitna. Yan. So meanwhile, the occipital lobe is the one found at the back, and it is the visual processing center of the brain. So, yan, the occipital lobe dito banda sa may likod. And so, when one of these parts are damaged, let's say for example, there is a stroke victim, and then one part of the um, frontal lobe is damaged, and the part of the frontal lobe is responsible for walking. Yan. So, kaya merong mga taong napaparalyze. Kasi yung part ng frontal lobe responsible for muscle movement in the legs is no longer functional. Kaya may mga stroke victim na hindi nakakalakad na at saka napaparalyze. Kasi pwedeng may nangyari sa frontal lobe nila. Or for example, yung, di ba common din sa mga stroke victims, kasi yung tatay ko, ganun din yung nangyari sa kanya. So, di ba yung dito, parang niwe, yung parang nakababa, parang nakaganyan. So, ibig sabihin lang nun, yung muscle na responsible dito sa, anong side to ng katawan? Right, yeah, itong nasa right, may na-damage sa left side. Okay, so ganun lang yon. Basta pag may na-damage sa left side ng brain, ang naapektuhan yung right side ng katawan. Ganun yan. Okay? So, ito uli yung ating four lobes, yung frontal, malaki. Kaya malaki yung frontal kasi sobrang dami ng kanyang um, pinaprocess, di ba? So, kaya siya yung nasa may pinakaharap. Tsaka, kaya delikado pag natamaan itong parte ng ulo nyo. Kaya, actually, all of the parts of your brain is very important. So, we just really have to be very careful in everything that we do, that our brain remains intact and not damaged. Okay. Next is we have the cerebral cortex. So the cerebral cortex is consisting of gray matter that integrates incoming information. So it is responsible for the sensory, motor, and association areas. So yung gray na nakikita dun sa brain, yun yung ano natin, cerebral cortex. Yan. Next, we also have the cerebellum, yung nandito sa bandang likod. It is responsible for movement and motor coordination. So, the other term for this one is we have the brainstem connected to the cerebellum. So, since the cerebellum is responsible for movement and motor coordination, so, kailangan protektahan natin yung dito natin. So, for example, pag nauntog kayo, tapos dito banda tumama, sa may cerebellum nyo, medyo mapaparilas ka ng bahagya, parang masushock ka lang ng konti. Ayun. So, ayan, kung hindi pala clear kanina, ito yung gray na nakikita nyo, na nakalagay dyan, yan yung cerebral cortex. Nakatalibot siya sa may cerebellum natin. Okay. Ay, cerebellum sa cerebrum. Yan yung gray na sinasabi ko kanina. Ito yung cerebellum. Tapos in the cerebellum, we have the brainstem. It is the posterior part of the brain that continues downward to the spinal cord. Okay? So, sa brainstem, meron tayong different parts na makikita dyan. So, meron tayong hypothalamus. So, regulates the body temperature and manages emotions and sensations. So, yun din yung kanyang ginagawa. So, meron din tayo ng thalamus. So, it serves as the messenger, relaying the sensory and motor impulses to the central cortex. It is responsible for the regulation of the sleep and alertness. So, thalamus is also a messenger. So, connecting din siya tulad ng sa cerebral cortex. Ayan. So, kinoconnect niya yung sa sensory and motor natin. Ayan. So, aside from that, it's responsible for sleep and alertness. So, ito yung mga parts na iyon. Yung thalamus natin, nasa may bandang looban siya. And part din siya ng brainstem. Yan, ito yung thalamus natin. Hypothalamus, ito. Medyo connected siya. Di ba sabi ko nga, hypothalamus, nasa ilalim niya yung pituitary gland. Yan, so, dyan siya. Okay. And next is we have the pons. So the pons is the small structure that connects the cerebrum and the medulla oblongata. Okay, so ginagawa niya, connector lang siya yung pons. And then the medulla oblongata is connected to the spinal cord. So it regulates autonomic functions such as breathing and heartbeat. So yung medulla oblongata na nandito sa may bandang, basta dito na siya sa may bandang neck, papunta na sa may, or dito sa may batok, sa may likod. Ayan. So, this is one responsible for our heartbeat and breathing. Ito yung mga hindi na natin kailangang isipin pero ginagawa ng katawan natin. So, siya yung responsible for that. Okay, and next, we have the spinal cord. So, the spinal cord is the one that's found at our back. Okay? So, ito ay naka-incorporate sa skeletal system natin. So, it is a column of nerves from the brain to tailbone protected by the vertebrae of the spine. So, nasa spine yung ating spinal cord. So, if ever you remember when you are dissecting a frog, 'di ba, ang ginagawa usually doon is pinipis natin siya, which is sinisira natin yung spinal cord. Tas nilulusot siya sa loob nung sa spine natin, 'di ba? So, yun yung ginagawa natin pag pag nagpipis ng frog. Yan. So, yun ang ginagawa pag nagda-dissect. So, the spinal cord is responsible for conducting impulses between the brain and the rest of the body. So, without the spinal cord, then the signal from the body will not reach the brain and the brain cannot come up with a decision with the signal because hindi nga nakakarating sa brain. And whatever function na gustong gawin ng brain ay hindi magagawa ng iba pang parte ng katawan kasi wala siyang pamdala ng signal sa other parts of the body. So, kaya sobrang importante ng spinal cord natin kasi pag nawala yan, may hirapan na yung brain natin makipag-communicate sa other parts ng body natin. So, impulses may travel as fast as 268 miles per hour. Ganun kabilis yung pag-travel ng impulses natin. So, the spinal cord goes back down the center of the back and is connected to the brain like an extension. So, there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. So, marami siyang ganun dun sa baba. Tapos, syempre, as you can see, it branches out to the different parts of the body. So, the vertebral column is composed of individual vertebrae. It extends about 43 centimeters from the base of the brain to an inch or below the last rib. So, dito siya hanggang dito sa may hanggang dun sa may rib cage natin. Hanggang dun siya nag-extend. Okay? So, yun yung ating central nervous system. Central means nasa gitna ng ating katawan. So, ngayon, i-discuss naman natin yung sa peripheral nervous system or yung PNS. So, the PNS is made up of all the nerves that carry messages to and from the central nervous system. So, they are like telephone wires that connect all of our houses in the community. So, parang it's a series of network that connects us to each other, and it connects each part of the body to each other and to the brain. So the CNS and the PNS work together to make rapid changes in your body in response to stimuli. So these help the body, this help us to survive. So the peripheral nervous system is green in this diagram. The one that you can see, I'm not sure if it's totally green, but yellow yung CNS, green yung TNS. Okay, so the peripheral nervous system is divided into two parts, the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. So the somatic nervous system relay information between skin, skeletal muscle, and the central nervous system. So you consciously control this pathway by deciding whether or not to move muscles, except the reflexes. So the somatic nervous system is the one that we are conscious in doing. So for example, the hand movement that I'm doing right now or the moving of your legs when you're walking, you control that one. You are consciously controlling this one. So except the reflexes. Yung mga reflexes, yun yung for example, yung alam niyo yung fun, yung ano, yung kapag nakaupo ka tapos merong itatap na may itatap dun sa knee mo. And then, your body, even if you're not thinking about it, your leg will just jerk up. Ayun. So, kung face-to-face tayo, papasample ko to sa inyo eh. Meron akong gaganunin sa tuhod. Pero iyon, hanggang kwento na lang muna ako. Basta yun. Yung mga reflexes natin is the automatic response to stimuli. So, yun ay hindi pinag-iisipan, pero nagagawa ng katawan. So, for example, yun nga, yung kapag natamaan yung isang part ng tuhod nyo, ang response ng katawan is galawin yung muscle para umakyat siya. Okay? And next, we have the autonomic nervous system. So this one relays information from the CNS to the organs. So these ones are involuntary. So the somatic nervous system is controlled by our consciousness. Meanwhile, the autonomic nervous system is not. It is totally controlled by your body. Okay, and we have this sympathetic nervous system, and so it controls in times of stress such as flight or fight response. So kapag nasa stress ka, ayan, gumagana yung sympathetic nervous system natin na part ng autonomic nervous system. Yan. So, and we also have the parasympathetic nervous system. So kapag tulog ka, tuloy pa rin yung pagtibok ng puso mo, yung paghinga mo. So, kahit na tulog ka, nagre-rest yung buong katawan mo, hindi mo kailangan consciously isipin na kailangan kong huminga. Ayan, so, yung parasympathetic nervous system natin, yun yung mag-aalaga sa katawan natin kapag tayo ay nagpapahinga at tulog at hindi conscious. Okay? So, ayan. We also have the nerves. It is an enclosed cable-like bundle of nerve fibers or axons. So the tissues that connect or link the nervous system with the different parts of the body. So extending from the spinal cord are the nerves. So yung nerves, yun yung nagko-connect. Kasi kung ba, diba, sabi ko kanina may mga nerves tayo dito, sa fingers natin, sa arms, papunta dito sa gitna. Ganon din sa legs natin, meron din tayo mga nerves. Yan. So, ito yung kumbaga ito yung parang daanan para ma-reach yung lahat ng parte ng katawan ng tao. Okay, so meron tayong tatlong klase ng neurons. So we have the sensory, interneuron, and motor neuron. So the sensory neurons carry impulses from inside and outside the body to the brain and the spinal cord. So ito naman, mostly responsible for our senses. Okay? So yung mga sense of touch, sense of smell, kasi from outside the body to the spinal cord. Okay? Kasi sensory. Bahala sila sa mga sense organs natin. Sa skin, sa tongue, sa eyes. So, sila yung nagdadala. Yan. The interneurons, so this is the second type of neuron. It's found within the brain and the spinal cord. It processes the incoming impulses and pass them on to motor neurons. So, yung interneuron, ayan, so, from the sensory neurons, ayan, so, ipapasa niya sa motor. So, sensory to interneuron to motor neuron. Okay? So, sensory from the body, interneuron na nasa spinal cord papunta sa brain, and then from the interneuron, ilalabas na siya sa motor neuron. So, the motor neurons carry impulses away from the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, so basta ganito lang yung daloy niya. Sensory, papunta. Interneuron, nasa loob. Nagpa-process kung saan siya papadala. And then yung motor, tawag dito, siyempre interneuron, siya muna yung process papunta sa brain. Then, siyempre si brain magpapadala uli ng signal sa interneuron. Then, si interneuron ay ipapadala na yung signal sa motor neurons. Okay? So, ganun. So, for example, someone taps you on your shoulder. So, the receptors in the skin sense the touch or stimuli. And then the sensory neurons transmit that someone touched you. And then the information is sorted and interpreted in the brain. So, a response is determined by interneuron. So, napadala na siya ng sensory sa may brain. Tapos, si interneuron nandun na para ipadala sa motor neuron. Yan. So, siya yung papadala sa, nagre-respond dun sa message, sa impulse. And then, the motor neuron transmit the message from the CNS to the shoulder muscles. So, actually, nakadepende na to kung ano yung response ng katawan mo. Kasi minsan yung mga taong kinakalabit mo na, pero hindi naman tumitingin. So, nakadepende na yan sa kung ano yung decision ng brain nyo. So, for example, ang decision mo is to turn and look at the person that is tapping you, then the shoulder muscles are activated. So, gagalaw ngayon yung mga nerve, yung dinidictate ng nerves na yung muscle mo gagalaw. So, lilingon ka na. Yun. Okay? So, this is it for our discussion uh, for the nervous system. So, this is how we can relate how our body responds to outside stimuli. So, this also helps the endocrine system to to maintain homeostasis in our body. Okay, so that's it. And then tomorrow, we will have the reproductive system or for the next meeting. Okay. Goodbye and thank you, grade 10.